All right, we're in the Easter Open tournament, doing a little walkthrough here. It's Sunday. Tournament starts tomorrow. A lot of these holes, if you're watching this playlist, I've got, if you look at the names on there, just start at the top on this walkthrough, and then it'll walk you through. Some of these Sunshine Glade holes aren't available and Rookie Tour play anymore, so I had to take them from the Ghostly Glades tournament. So that in the tournament, in the Easter tournament, it's going to be bright like this, but in the Ghostly Glades tournament, it was dark. So don't worry, it's going to be bright like this. But that's the only way I could get those videos to show them on there. The only hole I don't have here is hole 5, and we'll talk about it in this walkthrough, but I do not have a video for hole number 5. So I have 1 through 9 minus hole 5. So on hole number 1, this is a par 4. If you have, there's a couple ways to come at this hole. You can do a rough bump right here. It's going to take a bigger ball, and when you do this, it's not going to take a whole lot, like maybe 1.5 top spin in order to pull it out. You will want to put on your club, you're going to want to put on maximum right hand side spin. If you're going to do this, it's best served if you have, it's a extra mile. You're going to need a bigger ball. You're going to have to bring a Titan, a 3-power ball, in order to get to this area and then try and dribble it out onto the green. So if you've got lesser developed clubs, this is probably the shot that you want to work on as the week goes on. In the higher divisions, if you're playing from the Pro Tour, Pro Tees, playing Pro or Expert, this is how you're going to want to get on this hole. But in Rookie, especially if you've got some higher developed clubs, I like to come at it with a quarterback and start my landing zone right off in here. When I look at the video in here, I've got my orange rings just slightly overlapping on this rough, and my white ring is pretty close up here to the sand. So I'm right in this area, and it's actually, if I do the rings right, I'm kind of like in this area right here. And so my ball guide's leading my ball out this way. So I'm going to do maximum backspin, maximum left-hand side spin. I'm going to do maximum backspin, whatever's left in left-hand side spin, and just about maybe half to 1 ball of curl, and bringing it right towards the hole and trying to stop right here. It's actually a pretty good, you get a pretty decent shot. Whenever you have to add curl into a shot, it's such a big variable that, it's not, your hole-in-one chance here on this par 4 is diminished. You do have a pretty decent shot at hole-in-one here because you're not having to apply the curl, so you can work that shot. But I like that out here because I don't want to get caught up. It's too easy out here, especially with an extra mile, and it's so inaccurate. If you hit a great to the left or the right, you could end up getting caught down here. And this hole right here, if you want to be at the top of the charts, it's absolutely mandatory that you get an eagle on this hole. You can't afford to leave this hole with anything less than an eagle. So whatever you do on this hole, you have to do something that's repeatable. And the thing about the rough bump on this hole, while I like that shot, and at the higher tours, it is the shot to take. In Rookie, it's not as consistent as trying to bring it in. Now you can do the same shot out here with an extra mile. You just have to make sure that you have 2 or 3 backspin on your ball or on your club in order to slow it down. And a lot of times what you'll find is that you'll end up back here on the fringe or on the fairway off the green and having to chip it on. What you don't want to do is blow past it and end up in the sand out here or in the rough out here, because that's not doing you any good. So with your clubs, you're going to have to work the deal. But the rough bump is a very common way. You're going to see a lot of people do it, but I like this shot over here with a quarterback. If your clubs are anywhere near being developed, if you've got a quarterback start to get it starts to get its backspin at about level 8. So if you got a level 8 quarterback, this is a great way to come at it. The other thing you can do is if you've got a higher level rocket, it's got a little bit less distance than the quarterback. You'll have a little, you don't have to get all the way up into this opening up here. I do that so that I can do max backspin so I can really be aggressive at going towards the hole. But you can be back a little bit further as long as your second bounce is, if you apply like 2 to 3 backspin, you want your second bounce because you're going to have to apply curl. So you have to think if your first bounce is here and your second bounce is here, and here's the arc. If you apply curl, you've only got this much room and you're in the sand. So if you're going to apply curl, you've got to make sure that the second bounce is far enough out here that when you apply the curl and you think of the arc that it goes in when you apply curl, that no matter what on that arc, you're past the sand. So if you're coming at it from this side, you're going to need, at least 2 to 3 backspin. And it doesn't take a lot if you're coming at it from here because you can start back a little bit further and dribble it towards the hole. I'm being pretty aggressive, and when you watch the video, I'm being pretty aggressive on trying to get hole-in-one here. And in this particular tournament that we were in, and this tournament, the Easter tournament, has a lot of the same holes. Some of these other par 4s are super tough. They're not real. They don't lend themselves to getting eagles. So, getting an eagle here, but giving myself at least a look at hole-in-one is really the goal. And this is going to be dependent on what you like to do. So if you like to do the rough bump, go for the rough bump. It'll give you a nice shot. But I'll tell you right now, if you're using an extra mile out here, the first time you hit that thing great to the left or the right and it ends up in the second cut, and your ball ends up stopping right here, you'll feel sick to your stomach. This shot out here is, in my opinion, is a lot more repeatable because I'm not depending on that stuff. I can do the same shot over and over and get it right towards the green. All right, that was hole number 1. And what I do on this is I use a QB and a Kingmaker. And I'm using the Kingmaker because it has all that side spin. And it knocks the wind down. Hole number 2. Oh. In tournament play, in one-on-one play, I almost always play this hole. I almost always play it out here. You do have to do a little bit of an overpower in order to get your ball up here, and it all depends on which way the wind's blowing when you're in one-on-one. If you shoot, let's take line 1. Let's take, you go, okay, hey, I'm just going to lay it up out here because this is not an easy layup shot. So from where the tee box is at, if you draw a straight line through this area, you've got a very short distance to stop. You're not really going to be looking at trying to run your ball up here. Your landing zone is pretty much going to be somewhere in this range right here is where you want your landing zone to be. So you've got to get over, woe your ball up so you don't end up in this rough, and you've got to avoid the sand. So this shot out here is not, you're doing a layup, but it's not the easiest layup in the world. So if you can use your quarterback over here, you'd be a little bit better off. At least you got a little bit more accuracy, you got a little bit more control of the ball. The problem with hitting over here is that your albatross chances are pretty diminished. And the second shot is super tough because those trees are going to be in the way. So if you land in the perfect spot out here and you're like right here, drawing a straight line to the green, you have got to maneuver around those trees. So your second club, 1, needs to have distance. A sniper is probably not going to get it done unless you can get farther up here. And if you're going to go for the risky shot of getting farther up here, you might as well go over here. So typically on this hole, if I was going to do a layup, this is a great hole for a big dog, especially if you have underdeveloped clubs, because a big dog gets its distance pretty quick and it's got great curl, and you're going to have to get around those trees. So on this, I would bring a really big ball to help you out. It may not, you're kind of doing a layup shot right here. You're kind of trying to woe it up, but that second shot, that big ball is going to help you out a lot. And if you ever find that you're pulling out a big dog, that typically means that you've got a distance issue, and helping your big dog out by bringing a big ball is really important. The other way to go is to go out into here, where you're bouncing from here with an overpower shot, and it doesn't necessarily have to be a max overpower shot. And you're trying to get up into this range so that you've got a guardian coming in, and the trees are no longer in play. So if you're going over to this side right here, this is your goal, then you need to bring clubs. You need to look at the green here. You know, look at where this sand trap's at, and look at how little green you have to work with on a wood. So anything that you hit out here, whether it be a wood or if you can get up here into your long iron range, and it's going to be one of these two clubs. I would definitely bring whatever wood and long iron you have that have the best backspin. So if you have a Guardian, I would definitely bring a Guardian, put a Guardian in my bag. If you have a Saturn and it's a higher developed Saturn and it's got backspin, I would definitely bring a long iron and a wood with backspin. And the wood and the ball, once again, a bigger ball is going to help you. A bigger ball is going to help you on the drive to get over there. You're almost going to have to bring it in order to get that. This is a super tough, super dangerous shot. Because if you hit here, when your angle here is like your bounce is here and then your bounce is here. So you've got this rough right here sticking out in the middle of the deal. And then your rollout, where this rough, you've got a very narrow neck in here to get your ball through. So if you watch the video, I'm not doing max overpower. I'm trying to be, and I actually hit it great on the inside, but I left myself enough room that I was able to miss this rough. But it's very, very tricky to get your ball out there. It's better to not try and get the distance to get way up here into your short iron range, but to get out here into the open, where you're a little bit lower here, giving yourself a little bit more room and just trying to end up out here straight and not trying to bring it around the corner. But anything that you do on this hole, in my opinion, you're going to want, if you go to this side here, you're going to want a big ball to get over here. If you're going to this side here, you're going to want a big ball to get up here. So either way you look at it, I think that you need to bring a bigger ball. And a Titan, for me, especially going this direction, I think a Titan's going to be better because we can get a little bit more distance to get out here. But a Kingmaker would work fine as well. You could probably bring a much bigger power ball. If you have a large ball collection, you could probably bring a 4 or 5 power ball and get over here without any overpower. And if you can get over here without any overpower, you're much better off, because you're going to be more likely to hit perfect and get your ball into play as opposed to doing overpower, especially if you have lower developed clubs and you're having to do max overpower. You could find yourself in a spot of bother, and if you get into the rough anywhere down in here, you're not going to be able to get on. And this hole here is going to eat a lot of people's lunches. Even though we were trying to get out into this area to give ourselves an Albie look, there's going to be a lot of people that are going to mess up on this hole, and they're going to have a problem just getting birdie. All right. Our goal here on this hole is definitely eagle. I'm going to go back to hole number 1 real quick. Hole number 1, our goal is definitely eagle on this hole, so that's a -2 on this hole. -2. We're just trying to figure out what our score should be, what kind of score we're looking at. So here we're definitely wanting to get a -2. We're wanting to be on and 2 and giving ourselves an easy eagle, but a look at Albie. And I think that the best look at Albie's from over here. And this shot over here, even though you're playing it safe and you're laying up, this second shot is tough. All right, hole number 3. This is one of the par 3s that you need to work on it with your clubs. And you need to establish what ball. I know that, in the Golf Clash community areas, like on these par 3s, we use lower level balls, or we can come at it, and you can. There's absolutely you can. The whole deal about using different balls on these par 3s is it's all about red line, about where you're at in your red line. So, like I normally like to hit where my red line, like I want to hit right in front of this. I want to hit right there. So I want my red line, I want to be at minimum club. So sometimes on these par 3s, you'll see me pull out a really big ball and you go, why is he wasting a Kingmaker on this par 3? And it's because I'm either trying to get the forward distance in the club so that I can reach a spot that I want to use, or I'm trying to get it so that my red line, I'm hitting right on my minimum club, because that club is the most accurate when it's at minimum distance. And this is one of those holes that it's going to take very little adjustment. I tend to not be very close on this hole, and I use my backbone on this hole because it's very accurate. And I tend to be a little bit farther back and just kind of dribbling it in so that the adjustment as far as like what you put on it is going to be very minimal, like maybe a half a topspin, maybe one topspin, just depending on it. I haven't played this hole in a long time. I got on and I shot a video of it. I played it a couple times in that practice round, and it was on track for the hole. I was getting my distance wrong. But as the week goes on, this is definitely a hole that we want to focus on. And I don't think for most of us that we're going to have to bring, anything bigger. You can shoot this with a white ball marlin. I may bring a nav on this hole just to knock the wind down, but I probably will come at it with a marlin. And then in the weekend round, I can pop out a Santa or an Oceana ball or one of the 0 power 5 wind balls. So it'll just depend as the week goes on. I'll start to dial the numbers in on this so that I know, like, hey, and I need to find a spot down here where I can consistently put my ball. So when I make that adjustment, I'm going in the right direction and I'm going to be close every time. So this is a hole right here on your cheat sheet, on your little note sheet. This is a hole that you want to put an asterisk on, because this right here is definitely a hole that if we dial in the numbers and give ourselves a super good look every time, that we can get hole in one on this. This is definitely a hole in oneable hole, but it's going to be a -1 just on the average. Hole number 4. All right, let's talk about hole number 4. I'm not sure in rookie, and I will practice this. If I can catch this hole, I will try it. But I know that in expert, with the wind that we have, with a power 5 ball, you can hit through these trees right here. There's a gap, and you can get on in one. Now you can look at these trees right here, and you can see that between this tree and this tree, between this tree and this tree, there's a gap right here. And you can try and come at it where you're on the green back here in one. Now you do take a big risk. I've hit this shot before in expert, and I ended up in the sand. And so if you end up in that sand, that's not good. But you can. There is a way to get on a one, especially if you're playing in the upper divisions where there's higher winds. Even though you're playing from a further back tee with the higher winds, you can get through this. So I'm not sure in rookie if we can. I think we can, but I haven't tried it yet. And if we can, it'll be a very risky shot. In one-on-one play, this hole eats a lot of people's lunch. And it eats a lot of people's lunch because the green, this hillside that's in the front of this green, it looks like here's the sand and here's the hump and then here's the flagpole. And the flagpole is very, very close to the edge. So if you look at where the pin's at right here versus where the edge of where the fringe is at, we're talking about it's very close to the edge of the green. So it's hard to get to that spot because you can't run up to it. So this is definitely a hole for backspin clubs. Now if you watch my videos, you know that I play day-to-day with a Hornet. That's my preferred short iron. And on this hole, a Hornet doesn't, you have to do it different if you're bringing a Hornet. And so normally when I get this hole in one-on-one play, I don't come out here and try and get a lot of distance to get into my short iron range. I lay up right there in the middle of the fairway. I just try and hit a straight shot, and I just want to stop right there. I just want to be right here in the middle of the fairway because this is my long iron range. And in my day-to-day bag, I carry a Saturn. And I have tons of backspin on my Saturn, so I can start off on the green side. I can start up at the top, and I can try and backspin, stop it on the green. The deal with this green is that if you want to get close to the pin with a backspin club, you're going to have to dig down onto that hill a little bit. And I don't like hitting off the face of a hill because it's too, especially depending on how the wind's blowing. If the wind's going, if you got headwind or tailwind here, especially headwind, and it woes your ball up, you could very easily end up back in the sand. So if you have side wind, it's a little bit easier to make that type of adjustment. So normally on this hole, I play pretty conservative, and I will just get on the green, take my putt, and go home. The other way that you can play it, and the way that I think I demoed in the video, because the backspin shot's an obvious deal, just stay off that hillside, is that you can start off down here. That's your first bounce. If you're in your, especially if you're in your short iron range and you don't have a short iron that's got a lot of backspin. And this hole, if you want to dig down in here and use a thorn, you're so much closer to the hole and the thorn's got so much backspin that you have a pretty good shot if you're in your thorn range of being able to, get the eagle here. But this is a very low percentage eagle hole. If you do come here and you don't have clubs that have a lot of backspin, the way you're going to do that is to get yourself down into this spot right here. Give yourself tons of room. This is where, and I wouldn't put any curl on it. I would use whatever side spin my ball has and just try and bring the ball up here to dribble it up and then, make your putt, get your birdie, and go to the next hole. This is not a high percentage eagle hole, and there's a lot of people that will come to this hole and end up hitting one shot out here, going for this face bump to try and get it in the hole and end up in the sand. That's 2. End up on the green. That's 3. And then making a putt for par. There's going to be more people on this hole that get a par than are going to get eagles. So if you can come here and play safe, give yourself a little bit of a look, get your birdie, and go to the next hole. This to me is not a hole. The last full tournament we played, which was the Vintage Cup. Now when we played the Vintage Cup, there was one that was in between the Vintage Cup. When we played the Vintage Cup, it was all brand new holes, and everybody was really struggling. And I was encouraging my teammates on my clan to not go for it, to not go for those shots, just to play conservative, because there's so many people that are going for it. If you're trying to work yourself into the top 20 in these tournaments, top 10, you're trying to get into that group of players. Playing this hole and coming here and getting a birdie every single time, you're going to be ahead of a bunch of people, because there's going to be a bunch of people that are going to come to this hole and end up not getting birdies. And there's going to be just a handful of people that come to this hole and get eagles. So there's going to be some people that are going to be ahead of you on this hole, but the mass majority of the players are going to end up with birdie. And then, like, if you take 100 people, there's probably going to be 20, 25 people that come to this hole and don't get a birdie. So being consistent on these holes and knowing that, hey, and especially in one-on-one play, if you're playing this in one-on-one play, knowing that, hey, if I dig myself in here and really go for that shot down here, I don't have a short iron that can backspin it on, so I'm going to be hitting from down here anyways. And I had a long iron in my bag that has backspin, so lay up back here. The other thing about going for it down here and trying to get into your short iron range is if you end up in the rough or the sand, you better have in your bag clubs that will backspin from the rough and the sand. So this is a great hole to bring a Houdini, and this is a great hole to bring a machete. And really, the ball is not really that important on this hole. It's going to really just be dependent on what you feel the most comfortable with. I'm going to bring a Navigator just because I'm not going to need a lot of side spin, but I would like to cut the wind down a little bit. So I'm going to bring a Navigator on this hole. That's hole number 4. Hole number 5. Now, this is the only hole that I don't have a video of, and I've played this hole a bunch of times. If you're playing from the upper tours, especially if you're playing for Masters, a lot of times they're going to shoot on this side of the trees. They're going to shoot over here. For rookie, pro, expert, I really kind of like the shot coming this way a little bit better. And the whole goal here is that you don't have to. This is not an overpower shot. You do not want to do overpower. You want to bring the biggest ball that you can bring, so that you don't have to do any overpower. So I'm going to make some notes here. Extra mile, and you need something that's got a little bit of curl on it. So it'll be a combination of either the Titan or a Kingmaker. And we'll have to play this hole a few times just to kind of see how it feels. But what I want to do is I want to start my ball out in this area, and with with side spin. And I get curl and side spin sometimes when I'm talking mixed up. So laugh at me every time I make that mistake. So I want to come from out here, and I just want to side spin it and bring it out into the flat out here. So our goal is, obviously we don't want to try and get into this rough. I'm trying to get somewhere out into this area. Now I see people when they're playing this hole that try and come at it from this way. You know, they got out here and then they're trying to come at it from this way. I've never seen that being super successful unless you can pound your ball where you can get a bounce here and you can bounce over this and you can get your ball to come out into this area, maybe. I also see people trying to approach the green where they're coming from that angle and they're trying to do a rough bump right here. And they're trying to utilize this little teeny area right here, a rough bump. And about half the people I see do this end up in the sand. So I'm not a big fan of doing that rough bump. I'm going to bounce off of this island here and bring it back to the hole. This is a very, very dangerous par 5 because even if you nail the first shot, you still got work to do on the second shot. And trying to bounce it over, especially if you have lesser developed clubs, can be very tricky. So this is all going to be dependent on the clubs that you have, and it doesn't take a lot when you're down here. But if you brought a ball that has side spin, when you get down in here, you can move, you know, because if you're in this area right here, you know, and you're drawing the line, you've got to bring it back. So you've got to fill this gap right here, and you've got to woe the ball up so that it doesn't end up on the backside of the green. This is one of the older holes, and the older holes, you can find yourself in positions on greens where you can't make the putt, or it's very difficult. So it's better to be a little low of the hole or just right at the hole. But if you end up, you know, blowing past it, this can be a very difficult putt. So as the week goes on, I'll try and dial these numbers in for you guys. But the shot that I'm going to take is going to be from out here and then going from this spot and trying to bring it up to the green. All right, that's hole number 5. Hole number 6. And this is one of the Sunshine Glade holes, par 3. So the best way, probably, to get a hole-in-one on this hole is going to be to bounce off this island and then try and bring it up. I'm not going to do that. While I think that you do have a good shot at hole-in-one here, we can dial this shot in. We could start off on this side right here with a Guardian. And it'll take a wood, and it'll take a Guardian. So if you don't have a high enough developed Guardian, or you don't have a Guardian, then you're going to have to shoot off of here. And this shot's not going to take a lot of adjustment. You're just basically trying to roll it to the hole. And in one-on-one play, I find myself shooting off of this island all the time. And I've hit a bunch of hole-in-one. I've hole-in-one this hole probably 4 or 5 times. And it's been from this island. But in tournament play, I'm not interested. This tournament right here, this tournament has my teammates are commenting that, you know, like, this tournament's like super technical or it's super hard. Every one of these tournaments is super hard, and this tournament's no different. I mean, there's a lot of very technical holes that are going to eat a lot of people's lunch, and I'm not willing to take the risk that I'm going to ruin my round by getting a par on a par 3. And I just don't want to do that. So I'm going to start off on the other side with a Guardian, and I'll work that as the week goes on. So I'll pick a ball that gets me in the range that I want to get here, and then I'll have to start dialing in my numbers as far as the wind adjustment. And that's hole number 6. And hole number 6, there will be almost every hole on this tournament. There's going to be some kind of a wind adjustment, and sometimes it's not about hitting or adding on a percentage. So if you watch Tommy's videos, and Tommy's really, really good on, like, you know, whether it's uphill or downhill and that you're going to have to make an adjustment. Sometimes for me, it's not about adding on the 10% or adding on the 20%. Let's say I was hitting here and my minimum club's there and my maximum club's there. So we're in mid club. So with my Guardian, at max club, it's 1.2 per ring. At minimum club, I'm about 1.8 per ring. 1.7 is the way I play it. So that means in my mid number, I'm more towards like the 1.5. So if I was in my mid club here with whatever ball I bring and I do a 1.5 wind adjustment and I find that I'm constantly off, A lot of times what I find is that I don't necessarily need to add on 10% or I need to make that. Maybe I just need to hit with my full wind adjustment, even though I'm in mid club. And one of the holes that we had in a tournament here not too recently, I think it was the Vintage Cup, one of the par fours there, I've never really had a lot of success on that hole, even making wind adjustments. But I did exactly this, where even though I was in minimum club, instead of hitting minimum numbers or making a wind adjustment, I used my full wind number, even though I was in minimum club, and I started getting very close and actually ended up getting an eagle on that hole for probably the first time since the hole came out 2 years ago. So as the week goes on, once you establish what club you want to bring on this, then your next goal is to figure out what ball, so that, I like to normally be in my minimum, especially on these par threes, I like to be on my minimum club because it's the most accurate at minimum club. But wherever you happen to be within that ball, take your shot. It's super important that we hit perfect, because then we can learn something. We take that shot and we go, okay, hey, I keep ending up to the left, I keep ending up to the right. I keep ending up to the right. Okay, after 1 or 2 times of ending up to the right, I'm going to make a change. I'm not going to continue to do the same thing over and over and expect a different result. That's insane. So when you come to this hole with whatever clubs you have, whatever shot that you decide to take, if you want to do the one over here and you're really wanting to go for that hole-in-one, then take that shot over here. But I believe that there's going to be a lot more people that are going to go for this lower shot and are going to end up clipping this rough or overshooting it and clipping the rough or the sand there and end up in this area than there are people who are going to get hole-in-ones. So coming here and getting a birdie and going to the next hole, there's nothing wrong with that. All right, that was hole number 6. I'm going to just briefly go back here for a second. Hole number 3 is a birdie hole. Hole number 4 is another birdie hole. Hole number 5 is an eagle hole. -2. Got to get an eagle on this hole. Hole number 6, the one we just looked at. That is going to be a -1 hole. Hole number 7. All right, this is another one of the par 4s, and it's going to be a -1 hole. But this hole right here, I'm all about angles. So if you draw a line to the tee box, there's the deal. We can't make that. And I don't want to be down here on my second shot trying to contend with all this stuff. We have a fairway here that rolls into the green. And we obviously can't get out here on this line and have any shot at it. But what we can do is get as high up into this area as we can. I would rather be higher up here and have a cleaner shot to the green than be low down here and have to come straight at it. There is a rough bump that you can do here. And this type of rough bump is okay, here's the sand, and here's the hill, and here's the flagpole. And so if you're hitting off of this face right here, and you have any kind of headwind, it's going to want to push that ball back towards the sand. Okay, if you have any tailwind, it's going to want to push the ball up onto the green. So if you have pure head or tailwind and you're trying to do the shot, or any kind of significant head or tailwind, if you're trying to do a rough bump or a bump off of the face of this cliff, it can be very difficult. If you've got some wind that's moving anywhere, to the left or the right, and you're coming in here, then wherever you adjust your ball, if you mess it up or if you hit great to the left or right, it's going to still probably be on the same surface. Because it's all, when you do these rough bumps, it's all about what surface you hit on. So if you want to hit on the rough, you need to hit on the rough because you adjusted your ball for that. If you hit on the fairway here, your ball is going to go for a wild ride. So if you get sidewind here in one-on-one play, you can go for that shot. I am not a big fan of hitting off of faces of really steep hills in this game, because any little mistake and you can bounce straight up in the air, dribble onto the fringe, and go right back down towards the sand. And what you don't want to do is take a shot where you can get a birdie pretty easy and then turn that into, hey, it took me 2 shots to get into the sand, and now I've got to try and make a sand shot in order to get birdie. What I see a lot of people end up on this hole is, you end up out in this area, and so you've got to bring the ball back around. And I see a lot of people end up right here on this rough. They end up clipping the rough, and they either end up on the rough or they end up dribbling off the rough and end up in the sand. It's really important, if you come from this direction, and you're coming from this way, you're going to have to put curl on it. So first of all, you can help yourself by bringing a ball that's got lots of side spin. So on hole number 7, I would definitely bring, and you don't, the distance isn't as key here, so you don't have to bring a Kingmaker, but I'm going to bring a Katana because I want the 3 side spin. Because the side spin's what's going to be important here. So I'm going to try and lay my ball up out in this spot, and I'll work through the week to find out exactly how much top spin, backspin I need to put on it to be as close as I can, but never have an opportunity. I don't ever want to push the limit. You don't have to. You want to be close, but you don't need to be that close. An extra mile work really good on this hole. You do have lots of room out here at the end, so if you hit a grade to the left or the right, you're still in good shape. The key is that your second bounce, you want your second bounce to be past this little peninsula of sand. And then just a nice, easy shot. There shouldn't be any overpower. You shouldn't have to make any big stuff. The only reason you're bringing a Katana, even though it's pretty much a layup shot, is for the side spin on the second shot. Now, when I come in to this spot, coming into it, I want to, anytime you have to apply curl. So if you watch my videos all the time, here's 1 ring, here's 2 rings. I'm always on any transition between the fairway and a rough area or any transition, I always try and leave myself 2 rings and then make adjustments. That way I always give myself the opportunity to hit a great on the inside and still make the shot. The problem here is that if you're going to apply curl to that, you need to be further out so that curl can come into effect, because if you stay here and you use the curl, you take a big risk of clipping this. So move your ball out just a little. Move your landing spot out a little so that you can give yourself enough room for the curl to come into play. So on this particular hole, I'm going to use an extra mile, a Katana. My second shot, probably the best, you want something that's got some ball guide. You don't necessarily need a lot of backspin or a lot of stuff on this. So a Guardian would be, you can use your Guardian. A Sniper would be good. Any of the woods that have a little bit of ball guide, the more ball guide you have, the better on this hole. All right, that was hole number 7, and hole number 7 is definitely a -1. -1 hole. Hole number 8. Okay, this par 3 right here. I like this par 3, and I've shot quite a few hole-in-ones on this par 3. Instead of coming out from out here, and the reason I don't like, if I can get this to disappear here, the reason I don't like to come out here is because when you're out here, and when you're playing from the pro tees or the master tees, you have to come out here. You have to come out here in the open. So then what it's all going to depend on is you don't have a spot out here. You're out in this area right here, and you don't have any reference point where, hey, my white ring is right up against the sand transition every time. So I can put my white ring up against the sand transition. I can do this adjustment, and it'll go towards the hole. What you're going to find out here is that you're going to be out in the open where there's nothing for you to. So like the next time you come here, and you go, hey, last time I came here, I got a hole-in-one. Okay, try and find the spot that you were in last time, because there's no place out here to reference it. So if you're out in here in the open and you're playing on this side over here, your reference is really going to be your second bounce. It's all about your second bounce. So, your second bounce is right before the fringe, and then you're bringing it towards the hole. So the reason I don't play out here from rookie is just because it's not anything that you do, it's hard to repeat it if you're looking at your rings. So don't look at your rings if you're out here, because there's no reference point. Look at that second bounce, and that's the spot that you want to focus on every time so that you can try and repeat that shot. I come at it from right here. I use a Sniper. I try and wedge my blue rings in so that my blue rings are literally wedged into this spot. And then from that spot, I will make my adjustment. And in this case, it's going to be, I'm going to try and balance out the backspin and the side spin to bring it back to the hole, and a little bit of curl. This is a low percentage hole-in-one hole, just because anytime you have to add curl. But once again, I'm trying to be, number one, away from, I don't want to use the sand this way. I want to try and be a front of that sand. And I can get very, very close here. So on this hole right here, I'm going to use a sniper and a katana in order to get that done. And once again, I'm bringing the katana for the 3 side spin, not necessarily the power, but this is definitely a -1 hole. Hole number 9. Okay, this is a par 5 that we have a absolutely serious albatross shot on. So on this hole, I'm going to bring an extra mile and a Titan, and you could bring a Kingmaker to knock the wind down on the other end. And I'm going to do the bounce over where I'm trying to get my ball to come out into this range right here. It's very easy to get caught up. You know, you could get caught up into these areas, and it's very difficult to get from up here, anywhere you're caught up, you know, anywhere up in here that you're caught up not in the fairway, it's difficult to get on. So the drive here is very key. We have to get ourselves into the right spot. So you don't have to do something crazy. It doesn't have to be, you know, a crazy shot, but the goal is to try and get up here somewhere by the shadow. And from this point into the green is going to be a long iron. And I'm going to use a backbone. Now, the next time you're on this hole, I want you to try something out for me. When you're coming into the green, here's where the first bounce is. Here's where your ring set's at. I want you to take that ring set, and I want you to push it closer to the hole. So what you'll find is that this is the direction. Start out here, and the closer you get to the hole, what you'll see is, let's say this is the green, and here's the flagpole. And what you'll see is that as you push it towards the hole, the first bounce gets higher and higher and higher the closer you get to the hole. So you've got a little hillside right here, and as you're getting closer to the hole, it's making that from where it touches the ground the very first time to where it goes to the second bounce. That hop right there is getting higher and higher and higher. So I don't normally like to deal with that, because it's affecting my ball. It's going to make my ball do irregular things. So I like to come out, and in the video, I think I mentioned it, but then I turned around and I was not paying attention. I was talking and I don't know what I was thinking. I normally like to hit back a little bit further, where I have to put less on my ball, just a little teeny bit of top spin, just a little teeny bit, but I'm trying to hit further back. And the spot that I'm looking for is I'm looking for where it comes from the first bounce, and it moves in a forward direction to the second bounce. I don't want it to be doing this big hop and then coming, because that's going to affect how far my ball dribbles forward if I've got this big bounce. So I don't want to be really close to the hole up here where I have this high bounce. I want to be farther back where I'm trying to run it up onto the green. This is a very difficult hole because of where the pin is placed and the movement, the hillside around the green. And you can be very short, like have a very short putt here, and it can be a very difficult putt just because there's so much hill on this green. But the best way, in my opinion, to get a hole-in-one on this is to be further back. And so the next time you get to this hole, move your ball very slowly forward and back, and you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. And there'll be a spot when you move it back where it finally flattens out, and it's right there at that spot where it finally flattens out that I want to start. That's where I want to start making my adjustments to work towards the hole. And you may find it better, once you find that, to bring a Kingmaker on this hole, just because of it knocks the wind down on the second shot. And this is a very, very serious albatross shot. You're going to see a lot of people get albatross this week. I mean, percentage-wise, it's still going to be a lower number than how many people get eagle, but there's going to be, I would say there's probably going to be, there's going to be a bunch of people that are going to mess this hole up and end up getting birdies on it because they're going to get caught up at the top. So give yourself this really good albatross shot on this hole. It's definitely a hole that we want to work towards that albie. But it's going to be an eagle hole just day to day. So let's see where we're at here. We got 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. So the minus 13 is kind of what we're looking at as a minimum score. And that's not trying to get anything special. That's not trying to go for anything. But that's not to say that there isn't some holes on here that are super dangerous that can mess us up. This being one of them. This par 5 right here can be, if you get caught up here and you mess up that first shot, you could be in a spot of bother. And this is a great hole if if you practice from roughs and sands and you practice your max overpower hook shots. If you end up out here, you could do a max overpower hook shot and try and get it up there to try and recover. But we want to give ourselves that Albie shot here. Now let's see here. Let's go back to the... Okay, this hole here is pretty straightforward. We have to get an eagle on this hole. Have to. That's part of that 13. I mean, that's part of the 13 that's going to put you up there in that top 20. If you're trying to get into the top 20 and you're trying to be consistent on that, you absolutely have to get an eagle on this hole every single time. Where's that other par 5 here? This par 5 right here is going to be one of those ones that's going to eat a lot of people's lunch too. And there's not, in my opinion, there's not really a way to play this safe. You can come out here and you can do the layup shot out here, but this layup shot is very dangerous as well. I see a lot of people, and I've done it myself, where I've done this layup shot and I've ended up in this sand, or I've ended up blowing through and ended up in the rough. So I was trying to play it safe, and then I ended up, messing it up. So this hole right here, and you can't make it from out here. So you have to either get over here or you have to get over here. And both of these shots have their own risks. So there isn't any real way to play this and play super safe. But on the rest of the holes, I'm going to encourage my clanmates I want to see my clanmates raise themselves up in the brackets. I want to see them go from in the 50s to the 30s, from the 30s to the teens, from the teens to the top 10. And the way that you can make that happen is not, everybody thinks that, I have to get that albatross, or I have to get that eagle, or I have to get that hole-in-one in order to get me up the scales. You have to get those things in order to win a tournament. Your first goal should be to try and play consistent, so that and really, if you look at the people that are in the top 20, they didn't shoot spectacular rounds. From 5 to 20, they didn't shoot spectacular rounds. They shot consistent. They stayed in the fairway. They got on the green. They made their birdie. They went home. They went to the next hole. They didn't pick up a lot of those special shots, but they didn't make mistakes. They played consistent. They played safe. So hopefully we can play safe on this tournament and see. I'd like to see everybody just kind of move up one notch from wherever you're at. And so don't focus so much on trying to pick up all those extra shots. When you get to the point where you're consistently in the top 20 and now you're trying to break into the top 10 and you're going for wins, that's when you really have to start picking that game up. You have to start dialing it in. But right now, if you're not in the top 10, not in the top 15 week to week, the way that you get there is to don't worry about trying to pick up all these extra shots and be risky, is to just play safe. Go from here, get on the green, get your eagle and go home. Go from here, get on the green, get your eagle and go home. The trick is getting here, especially on this hole. This is going to be a hole that's I think is going to ruin a lot of people's rounds. All right, that was the Easter Open tournament. Just kind of a basic walkthrough. As the week goes on, I'll continue to record videos and I'll continue to tighten my notes up. So after Monday's practice round, I will have a pretty good set of notes. I'll play 2 practice rounds on Monday. I'll tighten my notes up for those 2 rounds. And then going into Tuesday, I'll have a much better idea of exactly how I'm going to play all the holes. So hopefully you'll continue to watch, because as the week goes on, one of the things is that, as the week goes on and I'm posting videos, I know a lot of people, like, hey, you're just posting. I'm posting that because I am making adjustments. And I'm trying to tighten those holes, trying to tighten that up so then a weekend round, if you watch the walkthrough here and I say, yeah, we're going to do a regular wind adjustment. But by the weekend round, I may go, hey, even though we're in minimum club, we're doing a full wind adjustment and we're doing an adjustment. So we're trying to tighten that up so that on the weekend round, we can see the fruits of all of our efforts through the week. All right. Thanks for watching.